Hey guys, and welcome to the video. Today I wanted to review NextDNS as a DNS resolver. I made a video a while back that went over the basics of NextDNS, and a lot of you really liked it, so I thought I would give you all an updated video. I also found a cool browser extension that adds some functionality to NextDNS, and I'll be reviewing that as well. Before we dive into it, make sure to like and subscribe. I'm trying to get more videos out about my home lab in the next few weeks, as well as my review of the Unified Dream Machine Pro, which I'll be adding to my ever-growing list of home lab toys. If you like this video and found it helpful, make sure to share it with your friends. Alright, let's get started. Alright, so before we jump in and review NextDNS, I wanted to go over what NextDNS is actually doing and what is a DNS server. So in the following example, someone on my home network is searching something on the internet. The device asks the router to look up something, let's say google.com in this example, through what's called a DNS server. A DNS server is able to find the correct IP address or location of the requested web server. In this scenario, as with most home networks today, the DNS server is Xfinity's. That server address for Xfinity is 75.75.75.75. Simply put, in the example above, you're going to use Xfinity servers to find google.com. I also added a round trip number, or as it is commonly called, ping. This number is simply the time it takes to get a response from the requested web server. On my home network, when I use Xfinity's DNS server, my ping is usually pegged at 60 milliseconds, which is pretty bad. In this next scenario, the DNS server is set to NextDNS. As we see, the ping has dropped significantly to 10 milliseconds. This number is actually representative of my personal experience in my own home network, but maybe not representative of what you could see on your end. Why is there such a difference in the round trip time? Well, there are many factors, but there are two which I'll put forward that are usually the most important. The location of the DNS server and the load of the traffic to said server. Since most home networks on Xfinity, for example, are set up to use the default Xfinity DNS servers, we can conclude that there must be a large amount of traffic going through those servers. Then not a lot of people change those DNS servers on their router or modem. This could be the reason for the slowdown. The second reason is that if we trace the location of that 75.75.75.75 address, we can see that it is located in Elkton, Maryland. Now, I personally am located in Northern Virginia, so Elkton is not that far, but the NextDNS server that I direct my traffic to is even closer and is actually located in Northern Virginia as well. So the location does play an important role in the ping and that number, or that round trip number that we were talking about before. Now that we got the general idea what a DNS server is, let's take a look at how NextDNS can block ads and tracking. It's actually pretty simple. Say a person on my network wanted to access CNN, and I just pick CNN because there's a lot of ads and trackers on that website, so it's a good example. The flow of the request and answer would go as follows. First, the user searches for CNN.com. Second, the request is processed through the router to the DNS server. Third, the DNS server passes the request to the actual web server that CNN.com is hosted on. Fourth, the CNN web server sees the IP, says, awesome, now I know how to send my website back to it, and replies with the content of the website. Now, if the internet were as simple as that, life would be easy. But however, as you can see in the graphic above, when a user requests to see CNN.com, there's a bunch of other domains added to that request as well. Most websites include trackers and ads which are not hosted on the same web server. This means that if your IP wants to see CNN.com, it also needs to request access to a bunch of other external domains as well. In the graphic, we see examples of tracking links and ad links on CNN.com. Where NextDNS comes in is the actual answer to the request. NextDNS sees the request to CNN.com from my personal home IP. It sees there are tracking and domain ads tacked onto that request, and it forwards the request to CNN.com to the web server with your home IP attached. But it also forwards the request to the tracking and ad web servers, but instead of attaching your home IP, it attaches 0.0.0.0 IP, and this is called zeroing out. This then allows you to receive a debloated answer to your web browser. This also speeds up the load time of the website because requests to ad and tracking sites can take longer than the requests to the actual CNN web server. Now that we know what NextDNS is, let's take a peek around and see what's new from the last review. right, so I'm at the NextDNS website. If you don't have an account with them, you can definitely get an account. It's going to be this URL right here, my.nextdns.io, and it'll give you a little sign up to run through. But I already have an account, so let's go ahead and log in. And this is a fresh account that I made for this video, so it's probably not going to be around after the video, so don't try and direct your traffic to it, or do if you want. I don't really care. All right, so now that we're in the NextDNS dashboard, let's take a look at some of the stuff that they have set up here. So these are the different ways that you can transfer your traffic to their DNS servers. So they have DNS over TLS, DNS over HTTPS, they have IPv6 addresses, and then they have the IPv4 DNS server addresses, which is the most common way to use NextDNS, is to direct your home network to these addresses right here. If you have IPv6 set up on your home network, kudos to you. I don't. I'm gonna have to adopt it eventually, but yeah. Anyway, so if you're trying to use this on your home network, you're gonna want to direct your router to use these upstream DNS servers right here. If you want to use it per device, like on a device basis, you can definitely download. They have apps for Android, iOS, Windows, Mac OS, pretty much anything. I also use it on my Android TV. It's pretty useful. So yeah, they also have directions on how to set it up on these specific devices, but pretty standard stuff starting out. So let's move to the security tab. And not much has changed from last time. They do have their threat intelligence security system set up. I actually brought up their block lists for their security block list. And if we go to this threat intelligence feeds, this is the one that they're using, and it looks like they're just pulling the block list from the domains from a bunch of other block lists. There's an extensive list, and then they also have their own. But yeah, you can go to these individual block lists right here. Some of them I've used before. I've definitely used the FadeMind block list, and then Spam 404 as well. But yeah, I went to their GitHub, and you can easily see their threat intelligence block list right here. It's just kind of a combination of all the block lists put together. Their AI-driven threat detection, I don't believe they have that on here. But they don't have that on their GitHub. But it's along the same idea, but it adds new threats when they become available or when they become prevalent among the community. Of course, you got Google Safe Browsing, which is another block list for the internet. That's pretty standard. Comes in every browser pretty much at this point. Crypto jacking. Crypto jacking is a interesting one because it just started happening, but basically so you can go to a website and they could have a cryptocurrency miner on there that actually uses the resources on your computer to mine cryptocurrency while you're on the website. So they have that a prevention for that right here. I'm not going to go through all of these right here, but I'm just going to go through some important things to turn on. Obviously, you're going to want to turn on this one down here at the very bottom, and you can also block top-level domains. So I have no top-level domains blocked, but if we were to come in here, we could block any of these top-level domains. Or you can hit add all, and it'll add all the top-level domains. I guess that brings us to this browser extension that I found. And if you go to GitHub page, he actually has a GitHub page set up for this. I've talked to HJK789. I've talked to him. Very responsive dev, very cool product, so shout out to him. But as you can see, it adds some, he says, quality of life features to NextDNS. We'll be seeing that throughout, and I'll point it out if I come across one of those things. But anyway, I decided to just give him a shout out, cool dev, and hopefully that product continues to evolve. So let's go back up to the privacy. And this button right here, the show added list, is part of that NXE extension that I added. So if you see this throughout the video, that is going to be part of that. And these are the default block list is going to be the NextDNS ads and trackers block list, which you can also see on their GitHub page. I'm not going to go over there now. You could take a look at it later. Usually the block list that I use is going to be OISD. I'm also going to use the energized protection block list. I use the ultimate, and I forget what the other one is. Let me see, maybe it's, yeah, the regional extension and then the extreme extension as well. It all depends. I found this one has the least false positives. It also seems to block the most, and it's worked well for me, so you can use that if you want. Now, NextDNS has this native tracking protection feature where you can block telemetry to the following companies, so Xiaomi, Huawei, Samsung, Amazon Alexa, Windows, Apple, Roku, Sonos. I personally don't use the Windows one because it actually turns off Windows Update. It could be a good thing for you, but basically it says that, you know, any request to any Microsoft server is going to be dropped. Apple doesn't do it, is not as aggressive, but you can't update apps on the App Store, I have found. But these are great if you want to block telemetry, and it's going to block software updates more than likely, but a great little feature. And you can play around with whitelist or allow list, I guess they're called, to allow certain things to be used, like software updates. It has something for block disguised third-party trackers, and then they have a affiliate and tracking links that you can allow those. I really have mixed feelings about this because it can allow some tracking links through. I usually keep that turned off. All right, let's go back up to parental controls. This is another great feature for NextDNS. I know a lot of parents use this. But you can add pretty much any website on the block list and it'll block access to it on your home network or on the device that NextDNS is running. And a lot of this is gaming stuff. If you want to block YouTube, Disney Plus, Signal, Zoom. So if you can think of a service that you want to block on your home network, then you can block it here. It'll more than likely be there, or you can add it in the deny list. And if you look into the categories as well, they have 5 different categories that you can block. You can block gambling, dating, piracy, social networks, and these are very good block lists that they have set up. Those are also on the GitHub. But yeah, something to have, something to add on. Now, a recreation time is kind of like a time where parental controls are turned off. So if you turn parental controls off at night when the kids are asleep, or another time when they're at school or something like that, you can do that here. Safe search is very important as well. It basically makes sure that no adult content shows up in search results. Very important for parents of younger kids. Now, the YouTube restricted mode that they include here is extremely restricted. It basically makes YouTube just turn into YouTube Kids, essentially. I don't like to turn that on because a lot of videos that are not, that should not be blocked are going to end up being blocked. Now, this block bypass method is also important. Sometimes if your kids are tech savvy or your guests want to access a website on your home network and you don't want them to, they will use a VPN. This will really block that. They won't be able to use a VPN on your home network, or at least to bypass. They won't be able to use it to bypass NextDNS, so definitely a very cool feature that I like. Now, if we go into the deny list, this is where that NXE enhanced extension comes in handy. I have a deny list of about, I would say, like 20 URLs that I commonly add whenever I use NextDNS. And this extension allows you to add more than one at a time. If I were to turn this extension off, you'd see that you wouldn't be able to add those in a list. So I'm gonna do, let's see, I'm just going to hit enter and it'll add that. And you could just copy and paste a massive list in there and it'll add them one at a time. Now it also allows you to sort by A to Z. You can sort by top level domains, bold root domains, light and subdomains. So if you hit this, this will be bold and it'll show you if there's a subdomain right there. And you could also do right aligned, which I'm not sure why we do that. Same thing for allow list, not much there. And then if we look at the analytics page, I haven't pushed any traffic through here, so you aren't going to see anything, but you can filter by the amount of time there. It'll show you the amount of queries, blocked queries, queries in general, and then it'll also give you a breakdown of your GAFAM use. And that's Google, Amazon, Facebook, Apple, Microsoft, and that'll show you where most of your traffic is going. It'll also show you what root domains you commonly use, the IPs making the request, the reason for the blocking of the IP, and the devices making the request. So super handy dashboard. It also shows you a map here of where your traffic is coming from. Pretty cool. Logs is definitely going to be where, if you ever have an issue with this, you're definitely going to be in the logs looking at the queries being made and, you know, whitelisting if something is breaking or not. This extension also lets you list the queries by date, which is super handy. It lets you filter as well. And then there's a few other things in there that I'm not going to show now, but you can show only block queries or raw query logs. So yeah, super helpful. You're really going to be in the logs quite a lot. And last but not least, if we go to the settings page, you can see these buttons down here are from that NXE enhanced extension. You can export your config from NextDNS to a file. If you're moving between NextDNS accounts, super helpful. You can export the settings for the extension, which is also helpful. And obviously you can import the exported content. Some of the things to go over in settings, you can turn off logs altogether if you wanted to, or you can turn off logging IPs or the domains. You can change the retention for the logs. Now, I always like to store my logs in Switzerland because they have stringent data laws. You can show a block page here when a domain is being blocked. It could impact your ping because sometimes the block page will have to load, and so it could take a little longer, but definitely something to use if you want to make sure that someone knows that something is getting blocked. And if we go down here to performance, you can anonymize client subnet. They have a cache booster and CNAME flattening. And this is interesting. This is brand new, but it allows you to access Web3 websites. So for example, Vitalik.eth is Vitalik Buterin's website, and he has it on the .eth subdomain. So having this on will allow you to access these Web3 websites. I'm not super into Web3. I think it's still, slowly becoming a thing, but eventually it will happen, and it won't just be a bunch of weird coins that people are creating. It'll be a lot of cool projects, so we'll have to stay tuned for that. But if you want to be on the cutting edge now, you can enable that as well in settings. Now this last part, which often gets overlooked, is rewriting. It's pretty cool because I have a lot of internal services that I run on my home network. So for example, if I wanted to access my router on this domain right here, my-router.home, I would just put the here's an example IP that commonly used for routers, and I could hit save. So when I go here, then I'll be able to hit my router at that URL instead of typing in the IP address. So it's little things like that where you can really add this to your home lab and use that rewrite feature to access your services internally over a domain name and not necessarily over the IP. I think we've gone over everything. Like I said, if you like this video, make sure and share it with someone, and go ahead and subscribe and turn on the notifications or whatever you got to do. I don't know go ahead and subscribe and turn on the notifications. I'm going to have more videos coming out, especially about my UDM Pro, and then also I'm going to have some Kubernetes videos as well for you. All right, that's all for today. Peace.